Hello kindred longevity lifestyle designers, this is Gavin here with secretsoflongevity.com. There's a recent story that's been in the headlines, it was just making its rounds late last week or midweek even, and it was about a woman who's 29 who has a very difficult to treat form of brain cancer, and she's chosen, with how far it's progressed, to actually move to one of the few states that allow assisted suicide, and she is going to likely take her own life at a time of her choosing, sometime after the new year, it sounds like. Now, my initial reaction to this was intense, and I'm not going to convey that intensity here, but I'm going to have some strong worded things to say. And I don't do this to insult or put down this woman in a time of suffering, but rather to drive the point home that it's very disturbing to see people who accept and give up on things, and they've accepted this medical paradigm that doesn't really give them any other option. When a chronic illness, all chronic illnesses are completely 100% treatable. There's absolutely certain illnesses that, if you think of a spectrum, on one end is our genetics and what our genetics predispose us towards. On the other hand is 100% pure lifestyle-based illnesses, or even occurrences. So you touch a hot pan, you get a burn. That's an acute reaction, and that's a health problem. So you would address that through the proper dressing of a burn wound. As we get to more chronic things, not acute things, you can have acute things like a cold as well, but the more you get to more chronic things, the more people have this idea in their mind that these things just happen out of the blue and there's nothing we can really do except accept the mainstream model of medicine's approach to it, and if that doesn't work, then we're pretty much screwed. And to top it off, some people actually believe that the genetic side of it, which you can have predispositions to certain illnesses, if you have, say, a family history of something and you end up with that thing, people think that that's then incurable almost, or that you're extremely likely to get it if you have a genetic predisposition, irregardless of what lifestyle habits you might have been doing that your ancestors were doing that you've carried on doing. Now, there's all sorts of subtle things in our lifestyle that can predispose us and wear down our fortitude of our health over time, which can lead to various illnesses. I don't know anything about this woman who obviously has this awful form of cancer, and I don't know what she's tried, I don't know what her lifestyle was, I don't know her own personal genetic history and her family, and we will never know. She's not going to release that information. But we know absolutely for sure that cancer is absolutely not a 100% genetic caused disease. The only ones that are things like Down syndrome, sickle cell anemia, these things that you're basically born with and you can't change. So everything else has some effect caused by our environment. So you have control over that, not the medical system. If you give up your idea of control over this, which has a whole wide range of psychological, or we could even say psychoneuro immunology component to it, when you have that deep spirit sense of giving up on that deep level, you're opening yourself up to that illness. That sounds crazy and out there, but this is where psychoneuro immunology is leading to, that our ideas and beliefs about our self and our health and what we can expect is going to write our future, so to speak. So it's predicting our future for what it is we're going to run into. This is why I'm so big on having a absolutely resolutely, imagine yourself like King Leonidas in the movie 300, approach to your health being your own decision.
You've got cancer. Secrets of longevity.
The outcome of your health being 100% purely your decision and under your control. And that's not to try and guilt anyone who is in a health predicament. I run into the odd health thing, and I learn from it, and I accommodate a better lifestyle towards prevention and also curing and recovering from whatever has come up, whether it's a cold, or something more serious depending on the situation. So this woman has a lot of options. If she did any amount of research, she would come up across all sorts of natural health remedies and approaches. I definitely wouldn't say the majority of them are even worthwhile doing, but there are definitely some gems. She could go to the Hippocrates Health Institute in Florida, do their 3-week program, if not longer, for something that serious. She could go to the Tree of Life Institute in Arizona. I'm not a 100% advocate of every aspect of lifestyle that they tailor their programs to, their raw vegan approaches, but it's a massive step in the right direction, and that can be very beneficial to go that route, even for a period of time, even if you might not stick to it. 10 years down the road, you might start eating meat again, for example, but you're going to be drastically overhauling every aspect of your lifestyle, getting on an extreme detoxification regimen through every avenue of detoxification possible, through your diet, through your pores, through sweating, through intensive psychotherapy and emotional release therapies, through medical technologies which just aren't part of the mainstream because they deal with problems instead of actually just kind of skimming over them. So things like oxygen therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy. That is absolutely brutal and destructive to cancer cells. Oxygen destroys cancer. Getting the right amount of exercise in when you're on that healing path to help stimulate the lymphatic drainage, to actually help your body keep functioning as you're going through this intense detoxification. And before I ramble on too much more, I just want to point out some links below. Number 1 is going to be the actual article, or one of the many news articles on this woman. You can read about her, and there's just some of the language in it is very telling. If you watch the YouTube video, and it's actually part of a push to get a wider acceptance for these drugs that should be more available for people that choose to commit suicide, to get past the pain they're experiencing. And while I'm absolutely 100% for freedom of choice, and if drug companies want to play a hand in providing a very clean, not messy, not fraught with suffering form of suicide or assisted suicide, that's perfectly fine in my opinion. We should have the freedom to do what we want to our own bodies, even if it means killing ourselves. But she's existing in a paradigm, in a medical system, in a society that has denied alternative and natural approaches to all these types of things for well over a century. It all started actually literally 100 years ago is when it really ramped up. It goes back even further if you look at the developments of the American Medical Association, centralized control of medicine, and the dictocratic hierarchies that got set up in institutions which were funded by big lobbyists who were investing in European chemical companies that were just burgeoning. They were from the steel and oil industries, most specifically Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller. They were some of the biggest donators to that cause, and this has led to the system we have today. There's definitely some benefits to it in terms of crisis care. You're in a car accident, you want to go to a mainstream allopathic medical hospital to be treated properly. If you have cancer, you do not want to go through the medical mainstream route, and that's just my personal opinion. I'm not advocating anyone do that. Absolutely work with your doctor in doing this. But seriously, think about it for a second. You've just accepted this 100 years of millions, if not billions, of dollars of lobbying. Hundreds of millions of dollars back 100 years ago was tens of billions in today's dollars, if not more. And to fathom the way that completely changed the landscape of how we treat people. Most people don't realize that. They think there's been this free market in health and that the best things have always just come to the forefront because they work the best. It's not the case. It's been pure money lobbying. It has not been through freedom of private business, private healthcare. There's the naturopathic, the osteopathic, the chiropractic. There was the allopathic, all these different things. They all had different pieces of the pie because they all had different approaches for different things, and they had their specialties. But mainstream allopathic medicine wanted it all, and they had the ability to patent drugs, and that's when the big money came in. So I'm highly suspect of anyone that has this defeatist mentality. On one hand, I want to help them and talk about it because there's so many other options, but on the other, they've actually fallen prey to nature's inbuilt program which wants us to die. It's trying to kill us at every step. Our inborn spirit has the willpower to survive, in so much as that we can then procreate. So once we've procreated, then that kind of wanes. A lot of people tend to be on the downward trend of their health once they've had kids, basically, if you think about it. There's all those things that start catching up with them. But if you can maintain these qualities of youth and a self-rejuvenating type of metabolism, you're going to be someone that lives a lot longer than average. So a massive part of it is the mind. And this idea of giving up and not looking at the proven alternatives is part of falling into nature's program for us. Nature's great, but if you don't agree with something because it wants to kill you, it's okay to go against that program. Now, what I haven't mentioned yet, which in my opinion is the absolute best thing you can choose to start embarking upon if you have any type of cancer, as well as a whole wide range of things from mental illness to inflammation to diabetes to Alzheimer's, epilepsy, glaucoma, is medical marijuana. This is an industry that is about to explode. There's a few states already legalizing it. There are a few others on the verge of legalizing it. And when it does, you're going to see a massive change in both the US and eventually Canada up here once it makes its way up here. There's going to be a corporate side to it that's trying to dominate and control it, but they're not going to be able to control people's individual growing of it. If they go the legalization route or decriminalization route, it's going to make it much easier for people if they run into health problems to, grow a pound of it with just a couple plants. And 1 pound, depending on the type of cancer, is roughly what is required for a round of treatment for, up to a year or so. And this doesn't mean you have to get high with it either. There's a whole method that has been recreated. It was almost certainly an ancient way that it was done, or a long since forgotten way that it was consumed. But Rick Simpson, a Canadian doctor, has rediscovered it, and he treats people, but he also gets people to do it for themselves with the free information that's out. And by the way, you can check out link number 2 below for his Facebook post, which is criticizing this woman's choice and just talking about the alternatives of doing what he calls phoenix tears, which is when you make an extract from the marijuana plant. You have all the cannabinoids and the THC molecules, which have a range of benefits, and you consume that a small amount per day because it's so concentrated. You don't need to heat it, so because it's not heated, you're not getting high from it. You'll get a little bit of an effect of either increased relaxation and ability to sleep if you're doing the type of strains that work on cancer better, if you're doing more the strains that work on mental illness and neurological issues. Those are a little more stimulating, and actually you might find you think better on it. So right here I'm sticking a graph just to show you the range of different THC and cannabinoids that exist and how they all affect different processes in the body. And this is really significant because the research is out and it continues to come out. Cannabis is literally the most potent, most chemically complex medicine on the planet. It has the most number of applications of any medicine. Every ancient medical text, every, even not even ancient, like just going back 100 or more years, it was even used in the US for these same purposes. And it blows people's minds when they actually look into the history of this, just how pervasive it was. And why did it go? Well, because of, the paper industry wanted to dominate hemp, and the rope industry wanted to make rope from other things besides hemp, and the pharmaceutical company wanted to dominate medicine. And so this was all pushed away. Oh, and of course, petrochemicals, oil industry wanted to dominate that. You can make very good plastics from hemp oil. And that's the industrial hemp. We're talking about the medicine marijuana, which is a little bit of a different variety. It's been shown through untold number of studies. I've got the third link below, which is 33 studies, each one on a different type of cancer, showing marijuana's effectiveness for slowing it down, reducing it, and or completely eliminating all these different types of cancers. There's untold numbers of testimonials on people getting massive benefits from this. But, if you don't want to even go that route because it's illegal in many places, you can almost certainly get it with the proper licensing in many places now. But even that can be difficult if you're trying to use it for treating cancer as opposed to, just saying, I want to take this to fight the nausea from the chemotherapy. That's what a lot of people think marijuana is only good for, is, doing these vague things that help you deal with the pain of a certain illness, or deal with the nausea of cancer treatment, or deal with the pain and difficulties of glaucoma, the pressure in the eyeballs. So, yeah, it's far more potent than that. It's really disheartening to see people give up and not look at these very clear solutions to their problems. I've seen many family members of mine personally go through all sorts of difficulties, and that's really what got me into health in the first place, was seeing a great deal amount of suffering in certain people. And even at a young age, I knew and was aware of natural solutions to some of their predicaments, however severe they were. Yet, because I was young, when I'd even just slightly start to bring it up, my family would squash me verbally in terms of saying, that's just snake oil. That's not going to work. The doctor wouldn't approve of that. It's like, fuck that bullshit. I'm going to actually start getting into this stuff. I don't care if I don't ever convince my family about anything. So my intention is more about the spreading of truth rather than, trying to influence people to do what I think is right. And people can challenge these ideas and these facts around these things to try and reach a better or more just truth. But when there are solutions that people are getting results with and the studies corroborate, and it's just not acknowledged by the mainstream understanding of things, you're in a big problem. So I can't be held responsible for this, but I definitely think people should do what they need to do to survive, and that takes precedence over any overarching power system, i.e. government. And that brings up the whole other issue, which was part of my initial gut reaction that I'm holding back from being too vehement about, was the idea that you need to seek permission to terminate your own life. And it's not so much permission as to be able to get the drugs that will do this in the most peaceful, non-dramatic way. It's not too hard to get a hold of some opiate compound of some type and overdose on that and have kind of like a slow fade out. But that might not be the way she wants to go, and that's not the way she wants her family to remember her. So she wants it to be quick and obviously painless and no chance of it causing a problem and not working. So that's the idea behind these drugs. You kind of have to wonder what's the mentality that comes along with not just taking up and dealing with the issue yourself, i.e., killing yourself, dignity. But it's not really dignified if you're going and pandering in a servile, bootlicking type fashion to the government to allow yourself, give me permission to kill myself. Like, is that the impression you want to leave on your friends and family? I don't know. A lot of people actually admire that quality. They think it's patriotic or something. So, I think there's going to be a component within the psychoneuro immunology, once again, that if you're the type of person that is pandering and subservient to higher powers that are involuntary, you're setting yourself up for chronic disease. So what I mean by that is the unconscious programming that has to take place to get yourself to a point where you're willing to pander to people that involuntarily force you into their system through force or the threat of force. You're creating the problem on yourself, and you're setting yourself up for a whole host of chronic illness type diseases to manifest because you're hampering your immune system with those belief patterns. It's a well-established fact. The exact mechanisms and way it happens isn't completely understood yet, but there's a lot of progression in understanding it. Things like I've done in the past around white guilt or black guilt. So if you hold on to racist ideas against your own race, you're more likely to suffer a shorter lifespan, to have things lead towards you dying quicker. So that's why the mind is the first thing you need to start shifting. And once you understand these things, you're going to set yourself up on the right path towards taking control of your own health and making the right decisions, being open to other possibilities and not just accepting one medical dictocratic type solution. They say you need this approach for this thing that we see in you, and this is what the tests say, this is how long we believe you're going to live. You say, okay, that's one opinion, that's one response. But, you know, I understand people's tendency to fall for these systems because they are so overarching, because they seem so all-powerful, because they've had that money pumped into them for hundreds of years, or over 100 years. It's quite unfortunate, but you need to take it upon yourself to take your health into your own hands. You consider opinions, you don't just take them at face value, and you're open to other possibilities, to natural therapies that just make more sense. And, you know, if you do end up choosing to take your own life, have the dignity to do it yourself. Don't ask for permission. So, let me know what you think about this video in the comments below. Like, favorite, and share the video if you still feel so inclined. And with that, I'll talk to you next time. Take care and embrace life without limits.